Hi, my name is Ciela Crane from Cabarrus County, and today I will be presenting on lead soil.
How is lead soil defined?
Lead soil is the name of soil that has higher concentrations of lead in it than what naturally occurs.
Where is lead soil found?
Lead soil can be found in historically industrial areas in which lead metal, or lead-based products would have been used in the construction process.
Or high traffic areas
Of around 40 years older in which leaded gasoline would have been used and contaminated the surrounding areas. Or areas surrounding older homes in which lead paint would have been used and contaminated the soil and waterways.
This graph shows lead use over time. In red you will see lead paint, and in blue you will see leaded gasoline. This measures use from the years of 1910 to 1990.
It is estimated that between 4 and 5 million metric tons of lead has been dispersed across the United States because of products like leaded gasoline.
Why is lead soil dangerous?
Lead soil can cause lead poisoning, which is especially harmful for children under the ages of 6. Prolonged lead exposure can cause severe developmental and behavioral issues. For example, this can range from lowered IQ to stunted growth. And prevention of contamination is the only biomarker. This is because once lead enters your body, it is near impossible to remove, meaning that it will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Lead exposure in this graph is shown and how it affects children and adults.
It's not only a disease that can affect your brain, but also your kidneys, your reproductive system, your entire body is at risk.
When to be concerned about lead soil?
According to the US EPA, lead soil is of concern when it reaches 400 parts per million in a children's play area or 1,200 parts per million in any area of the yard. This is a reference when we're talking about the concentration of lead in soil in parts per million. 1 part per million is equivalent to 1 penny in $10,000 versus 1 part per billion is equivalent to 1 penny in $10 million. This map shows lead soil concentrations across the United States. Here you will see in the north and in the New England area where it is historically industrial, there are very high concentrations of lead, versus areas in the south and in the Midwest, the concentrations aren't as high. We have to remember that coverage is very important, variable when you're talking about exposure to lead soil. Areas in the north where it snows a lot and covers the soil will put you at less risk for lead soil contamination than areas in the south where it is bare soil the majority of the year.
Local hazards.
First, I want to clarify what a Superfund site is. Superfund sites are sites that are deemed hazardous by the US EPA, and they have to be treated over many years because the process of removing the hazards are very complicated. The Kannapolis Superfund site, found in 2012, was the site of a very heavy lead soil concentrations under a mobile home, like a mobile home park, in which 140 people were living there, and half of them were children. The contamination was caused by automobile batteries, where lead had been left to rot in the batteries and in the soil. And after a series of storms exposed the batteries, the lead contamination became very much a danger and a risk because it ran off into the creeks and led to the City of Concord's reservoir. Luckily, it was handled very quickly and very fast and is no longer a problem for us now. The MSR Superfund site by Bypass 601 was a site where the MSR company used, recycled, and threw away lead products like batteries and left them to rot in the soil. This happened from the 1960s to the 1980s, and it wasn't until 1999 that the site was finally cleaned. Should you worry about lead in produce? The simple answer is no. Lead in plants is measured in parts per billion. This is because lead is not readily accessible to plants and is not easily consumed by them. Lead is also not a plant nutrient. Plants are not going to seek out to absorb lead. It doesn't benefit them any. Lead is also difficult to absorb on a full stomach. Lead is more easily absorbed into the human body when the stomach is empty and full of acid. When you're eating something that is lead contaminated, you're consuming something that can provide nutrition to the stomach, meaning that your body is not going to seek out to absorb the lead, it's going to seek out to absorb proteins and nutrients like calcium, zinc, or iron, which are commonly found in produce. Avoiding contaminated soil. There is no lead soil contamination restrictions for protecting you from growing contaminated foods. So, you need to thoroughly wash your produce. Make sure that any soil that is on it is gone. You need to also wear gloves when you're gardening. This is so that you don't accidentally consume it or spread it around to any area where it can be consumed by somebody else. You also want to wash your hands and any children's hands very thoroughly. Testing for lead soil. If you want to test your yard and make sure that your area is safe or you deem it safe, make sure that you can collect a soil sample. You're going to want to then send it to a laboratory to be tested, and you need to specify what you're testing for. Specify for lead concentration, not total metal concentration. This is because when you're testing for metal concentration versus lead concentration, the process is very different. Metal concentration is tested with an acid-based test, and that might skew the results of how much lead is actually there. If you need help finding a laboratory or the resources for a soil test, contact your local extensions office or your county 4-H agent, and they will help you find the way. Taking action against lead soil. Lead does not migrate in soil. It stays where it drops. So avoid areas around contaminated sites or drip lines from old homes in which lead paint could have flaked off. Avoid those busy, high traffic areas. Leaded gasoline is very dangerous because it aerated the lead and was made able to spread for miles at a time. Till your soil. By tilling your soil, you're dispersing the lead. Lead typically stays on the first 1 to 2 inches of soil right at the surface. So if you till it, it's going to dilute the amount of concentrations of lead you have. Add fertilizers to soils, especially phosphorus-based fertilizers. Phosphorus binds lead and lowers the toxicity of it over time. Add compost and outsource soil. This also dilutes your concentrations of lead. This will make it much harder for you to be at risk if you dilute it. Cover bare soil. Use mulch or gravel to cover garden beds or children's play areas. Coverage limits exposure. Remember that. Also, build raised gardening beds. Just eliminate the factor of being in the soil at all. If you raise your garden beds and you use outsourced soil, you're not going to be touching the contaminated soil at all, limiting your chances of being exposed. This is my Works Cited page. I use sites from Soil Science Society of America, Penn State Extension's Office, Lead Abatement Resource Center, the Sacramento Bee, the American Geoscience Institute, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the Independent Tribune. Thank you and have a wonderful day. And remember, take this information with you and be safe.